Welcome to this tutorial, everyone. So what we are learning today is how to line your fabric, alright, your 2 yards of fabric with 1 yard of lining for your traditional slated skirts. Alright, so over here we have our 2 yards of fabric and our 1 yard of polyester lining. So the polyester lining in Ghana here already comes folded into 30 yards, okay, and somehow strangely the width of it keeps decreasing year after year. Alright, so now the width is around 32 inches, alright, and the length is 44 inches. Okay, so here is my traditional print, alright, and as we are going to find out, it holds the actual length and the actual width of 1 yard of fabric. Alright, the width was 36 inches and the length was 46.5 inches. So you fold it like I have done, vertically, alright, lengthwise, okay, just as you see me do. Now what we are going to do is we are going to find out how much or what length, at what length we are supposed to cut our lining at. Alright, so all that you see me doing is leading up to that. Okay, so fold your ankara or your fabric, your print fabric, fold it in this way, vertically, alright, just as you see me do. Now before you decide to sew your slit, ensure that you know the slit length you are going to be working with, alright, by measuring your waist to your ankle. Alright, now my slit length is 39 inches, and so to cut our lining you have to ensure that you add at least 1.5 inches, okay, to the length of the slit you are working with. Alright, okay, so my length is 39 inches. Adding 1.5 inches, that will bring me to about 40.5. Yes, exactly that. So you fold your fabric this way, alright, ensuring that the length of your fabric, alright, the length of your slit will give you the actual length of your slit, which is that 39 for me plus that 1.5. Alright, so you're going to ensure that you have 40.5. Alright, good. So adjust it appropriately, ensuring that you have 40.5. You have your 1.5 inch allowance added to it. Okay, that is what you see me doing. I'm ensuring I can have 40.5. Alright, good. So once you have your 40.5, now it will indicate at what length you are supposed to cut your lining at. Alright, so your lining should be here, alright, at 34.5 inches, alright, because your lining will come to rest here, alright, from the top here to there, right here. Okay, so your lining should be cut at the starting point of the fold. Okay, so we do this to ensure that we ascertain the length at which we will cut our lining. So here is our lining, just as we had done for the slit. You fold it lengthwise, right? You are going to cut it at that 34.5 inches. So you fold this lengthwise, just as I am doing. So you want to ensure that your lining lays perfectly on top of each other, alright, and then you mark out the length at which you are cutting the lining, which for me is 34.5. all right, now once that is done, you mark a straight line through, just as you see me do, and then you cut it out. Now, what the piece you have cut out, you are going to join it back to the rest of the lining, all right, such that the width of the lining increases. Okay, so like so, and you will find out that, all right, you're going to stitch it this way all the way to the hem. All right, now you will find out that the piece we are attaching to the rest of the lining is shorter than the rest of the lining, and so we are going to have to add up so that we can attain the same length, all right, before you can stitch it together. Okay, so please bear in mind that it won't always be like this. You won't always have a shortage. Sometimes there will actually be surpluses, okay, and the length will be equal, all right, to the remaining lining. So it depends on the measurement you are using. Sometimes there'll be shortages, sometimes there'll be excesses, all right, but in this case there was a shortage. So as you can see, I have joined it, and then I have stitched it to the rest of the lining, all right. So it seems to be black on black, but I hope you can see it. I hope it's visible. So once we are done with the lining, it is time to actually attach it to our fabric or ankara, all right, and we are going to attach the lining to the fabric on the right side. Okay, so if this were a full lining, that is a 2 yards of lining, you will sew it from one end to the other, but because we are using just 1 yard, we are going to find the midpoint, okay, of these 2 yards of fabric by folding it like so. And you'll find that finding the midpoint is actually not that difficult, because the ankara already comes folded into 6 yards or into 12 yards, okay, so the folds are already there, but you need to ensure that you lay them on top of each other so that you find the actual midpoint, all right, and that's what we have here. So you snip it, you give it a notch, you do it for the both sides, okay, the top and then the bottom, just as I am doing. Now once that is done, you do the same thing for your lining piece, your polyester piece, all right. You find the midpoint, give it a trim on the bottom and on the upper hem. Now once that is done, we are going to attach the midpoints to the midpoints, if you know what I mean. Of course you know what I mean. So ensure that you face the lining to the fabric, okay, not the other way around. Ensure that the right side of the lining faces the right side of the ankara, right, and that the midpoints, all right, as you see here, it meets the fabric like so. And you're going to start stitching from here to there, all right, and then from this midpoint all the way, from this midpoint all the way to the other end. Okay, once that is done, you're going to do the same thing for the other side. But you know what, let's finish with this side first. All right, just so that we are not confused. So this is what we have after stitching. You can see that, right? Yes, good. So you should have something like this. Okay, now don't be worried about the space that remains. We are going to work on that presently. So once one side is done, you will see that you have all of this space remaining. Okay, so you find that midpoint, and then you find the midpoint on the lining. You pull it all the way so that it aligns. It aligns. All right, guys, it has to align just as we had done for the other side. Okay, and so once it aligns, you stitch it from the midpoint all the way to that side, and then from the midpoint all the way to the other side. All right, so that is what I'm going to do. Once that is done, you will have something looking like this. As you can see, just as I had said, the lining had come to rest on the fold, on the start of the fold. All right, so this was what we meant. All right, so the lining has come to rest at that 34.5 inches, as you can see. Now ideally, you don't want to leave the upper hem like this, all right, and the lower hem like that. You want to readjust so that the fold some extends to the upper hem. All right, especially in the case where the ankara you are using has border lines. In this case, you can see that we don't have border lines. All right, so you can get away with it. But in the case where there are border lines, you have to ensure that the bottom hem shows most parts of the border line, and that most parts of the border line goes into the top hem. I don't know if you get it. In this case, you can ensure that both sides, the folds that extends are equal, or that the fold that extends to the upper hem is smaller than that extends to the lower hem. Okay, so let's pay attention. Always readjust so that some of the fold extends to the upper hem and then to the bottom hem, just as I am doing. All right. As you can see from here, the fold is about 2.75, nearly 3 inches. All right, and the fold at the hem is about 3.75, nearly 4 inches. Okay, now after you are done stitching everything, sometimes there will be some minor reductions here and there. All right, but it's also possible to attain the same measurements you have taken. You just have to readjust it properly. All right, so once that is done, you fold in this side towards the lining, and then you hold it with pins. So that is what I'm doing. We are going to stitch it. Okay, so just pay close attention to what I am doing and you will get it. Now you leave this side open. Okay, you won't stitch it all the way to this side. You leave about 2.5, 3 inches thereabout open. Then continue to stitch or hold it with pins to the other side, just as I am doing. You leave this side open also. Alright, and do the same for the other corners. The other 2 corners, you're going to do the same thing, folding this side in towards the lining, just to make this handleable. I'm folding it up because my table is also very, very small. So ensure that the fold is equal to the other side, alright, before you fold in the Ankara. So we had nearly 4 inches, so ensure that you have the same here. Alright. And ensure you have that nearly 3 inches on the upper hem too before you tuck in. You're going to pin up along this side, just as we had done for the other side. Do the same thing. Leave this side open. You leave the side also open, alright, and then you stitch. Then you do the same for the other side. You stitch it. So here we are done with the stitching. Okay, as you can see, check that out. We left the corners, the 4 corners open. Just as you see. So once that is done, you're going to flip it inside out. Alright, we are almost done, but not quite. You flip it inside out. So that is what you see me doing. Alright, there. So this is how we have it. This is what you will have once you flipped inside out. As you can see, we have our measurement here. But the top has reduced by 0.75 inches, which isn't that significant and won't affect anything. Alright, just ensure that you adjust properly. So we are going to close up these corners, alright? We're going to close up these corners. But first, let's iron to get a crispier fabric, a crispier surface, alright? So once that is done, you're going to fold in this side like so, just as you see me do. Did you see that? Then you adjust it, ensuring that it aligns with the hem, alright? Then you iron it. You iron it, alright? Ensure it aligns, okay, before ironing. And iron it in such a way that there are no creases, okay, because you're going to stitch it up. Please, if you didn't see how I folded it in, just rewind and watch it. Okay, and you will surely understand. It's not difficult. So once you are done, you tuck in the sides, the edges like this. Alright, ensure that it is straight. Once I am stitching it, I'll be ensuring that it is straight there too. So you are going to stitch it to just this first piece, okay? Ensure that you don't stitch it so that it peeks out at the outside on the other side, okay? So we are going to stitch it in such a way that it only holds to the inside piece. So ensure that you do the same thing. All right, if you do it properly, there will be no seam lines or no stitching lines showing on the outside. That is what you want, okay? So ensure that you separate the inside piece, the outside fabric. I don't know how to describe it, but you know that it's on, is attached, it's two, okay? So separate it and ensure that you are not stitching on the piece that shows on the outside. I don't know how best to describe this, but you get it once you are working on it yourself, okay? So you do the same for all the four corners. All right, so this is what you will have all your four corners tucked in, okay, just as you see me having here. I've tucked in all my four corners. All right, tuck them in neatly. So this is what we have. I've stitched it. I took it to my machine and I stitched it. So can you see that? See how neatly I closed it up? You want to get this same thing on your fabric once you are done. Alright, can you see that? It's barely visible. That is exactly what you want, exactly the result you want. Now you see that we have some creases here. Don't worry about it. We are going to straighten it all out, alright, to have a very crisp surface. See, there are no stitching lines showing up here. That is exactly the result you want, okay? So take your time with it and do it just as you saw me do, and you get the same finish. So once you are okay with your stitching, you fold, you iron it up, okay, such that the creases reduces to barely visible, okay? This crease here, we are going to iron it out so that it becomes as crisp as it would be if you had lined this fabric with 2 yards of lining, okay? Now this is like a cost efficient method of lining. You can line your fabric this way to sew your back slitted skirt. You can line your fabric this way to sew your side slitted skirt, and you can also line your fabric this way to sew your housewife skirt. All right, so bear in mind the measurements you are using, okay? But you can't line your fabric this way and sew how do we call it, a 6-darted skirt. All right, I mean, never say never, but there might be some shortages because it wasn't a full lining. All right, and your darts might come out bulkier than you want it to be. However, never say never, but ideally you don't use this for 6-darted skirts. All right, so this is it, guys. This is it. Ensure that you iron properly, all right, and ensure that everything aligns, okay? So this is what we have. So thank you guys for watching. Please, before you go, please give this video a like, share it to someone who needs it, and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you.